and start, but welcome to the third in a series of peer-to-peer webinars for RC&D councils. Today's topic is rural development. I'm Rosie McVeigh. I work as an AmeriCorps here at RC&D. We're located in Upper Northeast Tennessee, and we're representing the National Association of RC&D Councils for this webinar series. The National Association of RC&D Councils has embraced a new model of engaging and supporting local councils. This new approach utilizes sub-awards that provide funds, leverage local investment, and build capacity across the landscape. This approach was launched in earnest in June 2019, and in the past 14 months, more than 35 sub-awards have obligated $389,000 for projects across the country. The funds come from the USDA and RCS, and they facilitate outreach and training on farm bill programs, support youth interns / career development, and build partnerships with local and national conservation organizations. This is not the fourth of 8 webinars. I don't know what this is, but what are we, 7 of 8, 8 of 8? 7. Yeah. That are being held with the support of NRCS with the goal of expanding these activities by highlighting success stories and creating connections. We do have a quick survey, only 3 questions that I'm just going to launch real quick. Just kidding. I think Susan has access to that. Susan, can you go ahead and launch that poll?
There we go.
Would complete this while we do a brief introduction of today's presenters. I would also like to thank and recognize board members of National Association of RC&D councils that are attending today. And joining me today is our facilitator, Dana York. Take it over.
Thank you. We're excited today to have the Northeast region represented at our RC&D meetings, and Connecticut in particular. And today, as you know, we did a survey at the beginning of things that you would want to know. And the programs that are used by rural development were especially interested in it. And the people speaking today have the ability to not only explain what the programs that are available, but how they've used them. So I'm very excited to introduce Ann Correa, who is the area director in the Northeast. And Ann, you might want to tell them a little bit more about the area that you cover, and then you can launch into your presentation.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you. Good afternoon, or maybe good morning to some folks that might be on the call today. Thank you for joining. My name is Ann Correa, and I am the area director for the USDA Rural Development Office. I am the director specifically for the state of Massachusetts, as well as the director for the Southeastern Massachusetts and Cape and Islands area. Although the jurisdiction that our entire 3 states cover are Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. So we actually work as one jurisdiction because we are very small states. So we have 1 state office. Okay, so I'll get into, I will share my screen to make sure I do this right. Bear with me for 1 moment while I get situated. Okay. All right, just to give you some quick background, USDA Rural Development is a federal agency helping rural communities. Our mission is to increase economic development and improve the quality of life in rural areas. At Rural Development, we have more than 40 loan, grant, and technical assistance programs in order to support economic development in rural communities across the country. As you can see by the map here, we have 47 state offices and approximately 400 area or field offices, and our national office is located in DC. Also included at the bottom here is a link to our main webpage where you can click on the Contact Us tab, and you can find where the state office or field offices are located within your jurisdiction or your state. The first program that I'll talk about today is the Rural Business Development Grant Program, also known as the RBDG grant. This program was created in the 2014 Farm Bill, and the program was designed to support technical assistance, training, and other activities that lead to the development or expansion of small businesses within rural areas with the intent to create jobs and stimulate the economy. For this particular program, the definition of a small business are those having 50 employees or less and earning less than 1 million in gross revenues. This is a competitive grant program, which means that your application will be scored on a set of criteria and then weighed against other applications within your state. The highest scoring applications will be funded first. Each state receives a limited allocation each year within this program. In my state, this is a pretty popular program, and often we receive more applications than funding is available. So the scoring criteria becomes important. In order to apply, all applicants must be structured as an eligible entity. The project or service area must be located in an eligible rural area. And lastly, funds need to be utilized as an eligible purpose. Also included at the end of this slide is a link to the full regulation, particularly for this RBDG program, which can become a great resource of information if you'd like to learn more information about the program. So what is an eligible entity under the RBDG program? State agencies, authorities, towns, municipalities, nonprofit corporations, and Indian tribes are the types of entities that are eligible to utilize the RBDG program. Also, another criteria is at least 51% of the entity's members or owners must be citizens or resident aliens in order to apply. As with all the programs that we administer here at Rural Development, RBDG has a specific definition of what is considered rural. The service area of the applicant must be considered rural, thereby impacting small businesses that are in rural areas. The service area can be multi-jurisdictional, covering multiple towns and/or counties, and even an entire state. The applicant will need to identify the service area as part of the application, and ultimately, if awarded, the grantee would need to determine that each small business that they provide support to under this program is in fact in an eligible rural area. If the application is more project-based with only one location, then the project itself would also need to be in an eligible rural area. The definition of rural under this program is identified here on this slide, but can be complex and difficult to determine. So what we have done at Rural Development is we've created an eligibility mapping website that allows you to put in specific addresses or zoom into a state or service area to determine what areas are considered rural. So this link that is noted here is the link for all the programs that I'm going to talk about today for determining if you're in a rural area or if those businesses are in a rural area. What can RBDG funds be used for? Examples are technical assistance, training, planning, feasibility studies, strategic planning, community and business support, professional service fees for project development. There is a long list of other eligible uses, which you can refer back to the regulation link on the first slide if you are interested in learning more. But I think the key here is that you must tie the use back to assisting small business development, and this will need to be identified in your scope of work or narrative when you apply. So funding timelines in the RBDG program, there is generally a funding announcement in the Federal Register early in the calendar year, and applications are usually due for submission in March. Local offices are usually available to assist prior to the deadline and may be able to review your application materials and/or narrative to make sure that you meet the eligibility requirements and that the application incorporates all necessary materials. Applications are scored and ranked at the state or local level. Usually awards are made in the summer, and grantees are expected to have a 12-month or less timeline on the term of the grant. Extensions, however, may be granted on a case-by-case basis, but you would need to work with your local office for that type of approval. Since every state receives a different allocation and these are subject to change each year, I can't identify the allocation available in your state, but just to give you an idea, my small state of Rhode Island that I cover and work in may receive an average allocation for the year of about 130 to 150,000 per year, with an average grant ranging anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 per project. All applications must be considered complete, and here is an example of what to expect for a complete RBDG application. We have our standard forms, we have a scope of work or narrative, organizational documents, financial information, proof of matching funds if applicable, resumes and experience of key personnel who would be administering the project, letters of support, and demographic data. This slide is just to give you an idea of what scoring criteria will be used when evaluating your application. I won't go through each one, but note some of the highlighted criteria as leveraged non-federal matching funds coming into the project, experience of the applicant in administering this project, and the creation of jobs. These are all big scoring components and should be considered when submitting an application. Also, I will note that discretionary points may be awarded if the project meets any of the new initiatives or key priorities. Since these initiatives can change, I have not listed them here, but I have included a link to the priorities website if you'd like to learn more information about what our new key priorities or initiatives are for this year. So this wraps up the RBDG program. And so the next program that I'm going to talk about is called Rural Energy for America program, also known as REAP. This program offers two types of assistance. The first type of assistance being in the form of a grant directly from USDA to a rural small business or agricultural producer. The second type of assistance being to a recipient or RC&D perhaps for this audience who becomes the intermediary, all in an effort to support either rural small businesses or ag producers. These are small business and ag producers then become the beneficiary of the grant assistance to the intermediary. First, I'll talk about REAP with direct assistance. What does this program do? This grant provides assistance directly to ag producers and rural small businesses to purchase and install renewable energy systems or to make energy efficiency improvements at their farm or their business operation. So the small business and ag producer can apply directly to USDA under this program. The intent behind the program is to support sustainability and improve profits for rural small businesses. Again, I have included a link to the full regulation for further information about this program. The link is right here listed on this page. Under this program, you do have to qualify as an eligible applicant, and that can either be an ag producer or a rural small business. We have further defined ag producer as an individual or entity that receives 51% of their gross income from the production of ag products. I will note that if you qualify as an ag producer, you do not need to be in a rural area, and ag producers are considered exempt in this program from needing to be in a rural area. In terms of the definition of a small business, it must be a private for-profit entity. Examples would include a sole proprietorship or partnership, corporation, or an LLC. The small business must also meet what we call the SBA definition standards using NAICS codes. So basically, if the entity meets the small business administration definition, that satisfies rural development requirements as a small business in this program. Small business project locations, however, must be located in eligible rural area. In order to determine rural areas, again, you'll use the same link that I previously posted when I talked about the RBDG program. Here are some examples and a list of eligible energy efficiency projects and renewable energy technologies that would be eligible under the REAP program. Under energy efficiency, the definition would include improvements that reduce energy consumption as identified by an energy audit or assessment. For example, if you wanted to replace the light bulbs or fixtures with high efficiency light bulbs or fixtures, this would be considered an eligible energy efficiency project. As for renewable energy, this would be a system that produces energy from a renewable source, such as solar. Here is a list of eligible project costs for this program. Due to time, I won't go through all of them, but will note that usually the purchase and installation of the actual technology or equipment associated with the project is the primary source of those project costs. On the ineligible side, also worth noting that residential projects are not eligible to benefit from federal grant funds under this program. Okay, how much can USDA assist in terms of financially? We can provide grants up to 25% of the total project cost, with a minimum of $2,500 for renewable energy systems and $1,500 as the minimum for energy efficiency improvements, and a maximum of $500,000 for renewable energy and a maximum of $250,000 for energy efficiency improvements. So for example, a project with a proposed cost of $100,000 could apply for up to $25,000 in grant assistance. In this program, application deadlines happen twice per year. The first round happens at the end of October, and this round is restricted specifically for smaller projects. A small request is a grant application of $20,000 or less, or generally a project costs up to $80,000. The second round happens at the end of March, and this round is considered unrestricted, which means any size request up to the maximum amount can be applied for. This program does have 3 different versions of the application based on project cost. So the larger the project cost, the more detailed and complex the application is. There are 2 ways if you're interested in applying, or if the farmer or the small business is interested in applying, is that they may visit our website and download the latest version of the application. You'll want to make sure that you pick, the correct size application based on the standards of what the project costs are. The other way to apply would be to reach out to the energy coordinator in your state and request an application. I provided a link that will help you identify who the energy coordinator is in your state. Each state or jurisdiction does have an energy coordinator. Lastly, I'm going to talk about what we call EA RETA, which is a subsection of the REAP grant that we just covered. The program is called EA RETA, which stands for Energy Audit and Renewable Energy Development Assistance. The purpose of this program is to conduct energy audits or promote renewable energy by providing to ag producers and rural small businesses recommendations and or information on how to use renewable energy technologies and resources within their operations. This program provides grant funding to the recipient or intermediary in order to then perform technical assistance to the ag producer or small business who becomes the beneficiary. This is also a competitive application process, and your application would be scored and weighted against others in all states. Under the EA RETA, these are the eligible types of entities to apply: units or instrumentalities of the state, tribes, local governments, universities, RC&Ds, electric cooperatives, and public power entities. Just to note that the ag producer or the small business cannot directly apply for EA RETA. The maximum grant that can be applied by the intermediary is $100,000. And while a match is not required, it can be beneficial to the scoring process as this is a competitive program. Also, when utilizing the energy audit component of EA RETA, there is a requirement where the beneficiary or the small business or ag producer will need to pay for at least 25% of the energy audit cost. Here is a list of eligible use of funds, which includes salaries, travel, office, and some small administrative expenses up to 5%. On the ineligible side, the actual construction or purchase of equipment under EA RETA are not allowed uses. All funds must be attributed to conducting energy audits or promoting renewable energy technologies. So this is the same slide that we talked about in the REAP program. Under REAP direct assistance, the beneficiaries must either be an ag producer or rural small business. Applicants can only submit one energy audit and one REAP grant application each fiscal year. Combined applications are not allowed. So basically, if you're interested in both RETA and EA in the same year, you must submit one full application for EA and one full application for RETA. The total aggregate amount of the award cannot exceed $100,000 for both programs in 1 year. Application deadlines for this program are one time per year at the end of January. For those interested in pursuing an EA RETA grant, you should reach out to your local energy coordinator. This slide just identifies the criteria that will be evaluated in an EA RETA grant. We will look at applicant experience, geographic scope, the number of proposed ag producers or small businesses that are expected to be assisted with the grant. Providing a list of those ultimate recipients can actually add additional points. The potential to produce energy savings or some type of energy generation, if you have those or have identified those businesses and what that potential assistance from an energy efficiency or energy generation standpoint, that can also award you points. Marketing and outreach, so basically how you plan to promote and conduct the EA or RETA program. And then again, commitment of other funds coming into the project. While not required, it would earn you extra points. There is a minimum scoring criteria of at least 40 points in order to submit your application. I won't go through this slide because I think next up in the presentation, Amanda will go through some real life experiences a bit more in more detail. But this slide can be referred to provide some basic examples of eligible projects under the EA RETA grant. So here are two links. One is to our energy programs page, as well as the RBDG website page. And of course, if you have any questions or need to reach out, my contact info is here as well. So this concludes my presentation, and I will hand it off to Amanda Fargo Johnson from the Connecticut RC&D, and she will go through her experiences in utilizing these programs and working with rural development.
Thanks, Ann.
Sure, I'm going to stop sharing right now.
And
Can
Amanda,
everybody see me and my slides?
yes.
Okay,
Can you tell us the area you cover, Amanda?
sure. So my name is Amanda Fargo Johnson, and I am with Connecticut Resource Conservation Development. I am the Ag Programs Director, and then specifically for today's conversation, I coordinate our Connecticut Farm Energy Program. So we cover the whole state of Connecticut. So as Ann said, I'm going to go through how our RC&D has utilized these programs and also helped to facilitate ag producers and ag-based rural small businesses utilize their programs as well. So our Connecticut Farm Energy Program started in 2009. We do have a dedicated website besides our RC&D website for this program. We do a variety of events and workshops. We have special projects going on, best management practice guides. So that's part of our program. And then the majority of our program is to provide direct technical assistance to ag producers. While all rural small businesses are eligible, the focus of our program is specific to ag-based rural small businesses in applying for REAP grants. So the program's available, but sometimes they need that extra technical assistance to actually get applications completed. So we're there to provide that assistance to those that are eligible and their projects. In our state, just for reference, when we've surveyed our farms, about a quarter to a third of farms note that operating expenses for them are energy related. And so in our state, we predominantly have greenhouse and landscape and nursery producers, and dairy farms, who are our highest consumers of energy. And so the goal of our program is really to offset energy by either energy efficiency measures or renewable measures to bring down that on-farm energy load. It obviously benefits the farm financially and also helps our state by allowing more power to be on the grid. So when folks call us or reach out to us, sometimes they may be interested in solar first off, but we really like to encourage conservation first. Many times it's can be no cost or low cost, as well as efficiency, which includes behavioral changes, and then renewable. So we may have a farm come to us, we do some energy efficiency work, and then phase 2 turns into doing renewable work. And throughout my presentation, you'll see examples of a variety of types of agriculture that we've serviced through the years and their projects. So this is kind of any state. You really want to have a game plan, if you will, when you're thinking about doing kind of energy measures. And so that's getting an energy audit. Once you have an energy audit in hand, you can see what the recommendations are, and you may want to do them in phases, or you may want to do them all at once. For us, once a farm has gotten their audit, we then help them identify specific incentives and grants and loans that are available to them in our state. So you'll see some things that are specific to Connecticut, but hopefully there's something that's compatible in your state that could leverage the REAP program. So we have 3 options currently for our farms in state to get an energy audit. Through our utility program, we have what's called Energize Connecticut. It's a very focused fuel supply audit, but it is free to the businesses that are eligible, and farms are part of that pool. So that's a no cost option for our farms. One example of what Ann was referencing, which is the EA grant, Connecticut RC&D through our farm energy program applied for an EA grant, and in partnership with NSAVE are able to provide an energy audit to producers in our state. So we cover 75% of the cost of that audit for them, and then the farm or ag-based rural small business covers the remaining 25%. The third option is our partners at USDA NRCS. They have what's called an Ag Energy Management Plan. That follows the EQIP funding schedule. So essentially you would apply for your Ag Energy Management Plan. Once you receive that, measures that are called out in that plan, the following EQIP deadline, you could, as a farm, go ahead and apply to get some of those recommendations implemented. This is kind of a high-level picture of what Connecticut has to offer our farms in terms of funding for energy. So we all share the federal, but on a state and local level, ours is going to be a little bit different than what you all might have in your state. But the premise for this slide is just to show you it's not always one program. As our program, we try to really help facilitate and make farms aware of all the other options or available incentives to them in our state. So if it's efficiency, we may leverage the REAP program with something from Energize Connecticut. If it's a renewable energy project such as solar, we may be leveraging the REAP program along with the ZREC net metering, and then our Connecticut Green Bank may come in and help them with financing. So here's a little bit more detail about REAP, and I know Ann already covered it, so I'll be brief on this, but essentially it really is for installing energy efficiency improvements or renewable energy systems. There is a loan option with this grant, but predominantly the farms we work with are mostly interested in that 25% grant. But just know that the loan option is there. So when someone's interested in applying for REAP, they reach out to us and we walk them through all the eligibility, as Ann already has mentioned. So we want to make sure the producer or the ag-based small business is eligible per USDA rural development standards. We also have to make sure the technology they're looking to implement is also eligible. So we go through all of that with them. And so to give you an example, when our program started in 2010, since then to date, we've helped producers and ag-based small businesses receive over $5 million in REAP grants and loans, which equates to about $24 million in implemented projects. And as we go through these slides, obviously our goal is always try to help farms get to 100% of offset, but sometimes that may not make sense, right? So utilizing the space on a roof, for example, Kent Falls Brewery, we've actually done 2 systems with them. This is their first system, which initially offset 59% of their load. Oak Ridge Dairy is a large dairy operation, the largest in our state. And this system that we did offset a portion of their overall energy load at the farm. So each farm is unique. We have worked with some farms like White Flower Farm, several phases. So we start out with comprehensive energy efficiency improvements, and we've worked towards implementing renewables such as solar. And there's a variety of sizes. So Allen Hill Tree Farm, which is on the bottom of your screen, implemented a small solar system, which could be comparable to some residential. So it really doesn't matter if it's a large or small system. We do help the farms apply for REAP as long as they meet the minimum thresholds. And so some more examples of utilizing REAP. Freund's Farm on the left installed a new robotic milking barn. And so we've powered that barn with solar for them. Gilberti's Herb Farm on the right made some lighting and heating upgrades. We've actually done 2 projects with them. Typically, farms can see a nice quick return on investment, and then they want to continue and do more as their budgets allow. So our variety of agriculture includes orchards, doing about an acre worth of solar, to some of our smaller projects, working with crop growers and greenhouse growers, shade curtains, lighting, HVAC. Those are some of the examples of energy efficiency with our greenhouses. We work with dairy farms, cheese makers, equestrian operations. So in our state, typically our vineyards and our equestrian producers, farms rather, tend to come in qualification as, when I say ag-based rural small business, they may not be able to show 51% or more in ag production income because of the nature of their business. So if you hear me say ag-based rural small business, that would be an example of that. A variety of livestock producers, we do efficiency and renewables. On the bottom left is an example of an anaerobic digester that came online. So really a variety of projects. And then an example of utilizing a RETA grant, Connecticut RC&D through the Connecticut Farm Energy Program secured a RETA grant from USDA Rural Development in order to offer a geothermal pilot program. So there's a lot of interest about geothermal, but sometimes farms just don't really have an understanding of, is this practical for me? How much is it going to cost? So we were looking to take away that barrier. So we produced a handout specific to our ag producers, and then we provide a site assessment. So we coordinate an intake process, the same thing as with our energy audit program. And then once we've approved the applicant, we refer it out to our contractor, who is a geothermal expert. He will do geological research specific to that farm ahead of time. He schedules a site visit and goes and meets with the farm on location. And then we produce a report, and it's very detailed, has numbers, return on investment, so the farm can see if it's a practical choice for them to implement at their operation. We have, over the last few years, created numerous videos. So if anyone's interested, you can either go to the UConn YouTube page or the Connecticut RC&D YouTube page. It's always good. Farmers like to hear from other farmers. And so it's a good snapshot into their experience through the process of applying for REAP. So our office is at UConn Extension in Haddam, and that's my contact info. And I put a link in here because, you know, you should check in with your local rural development office. for further information. And last slide is questions, but I know we're going to hold them to the end. So with that, I'll stop sharing and introduce our Connecticut RC&D Executive Director, Jean Davies, to talk a little bit more about some grants that we've applied for.
Thank you, Amanda. Just pulling up my screen here. And okay, I presume that is visible. So thank you, Amanda, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jean Davies. I'm Executive Director and also a certified planner with Connecticut Resource Conservation and Development. I'm just going to go quickly over a few projects that we have partnered with USDA through RBDG grants. Our highest, I work in the arena. Amanda's the Agriculture Programs Manager, but in my role as planner, I support our projects that have to do with land use, environment, and where this USDA comes in with strengthening rural communities and their economies. So we've had several projects that have been infill projects. That doesn't mean that they are not as high quality projects. It just means that when it comes to our relationship with USDA and our grant applications, Connecticut Farm Energy is one of our highest priorities. So the other grants that we have gone for and applied to USDA RBDG for in 2017, we did, and I'll go over these fairly quickly, is the Connecticut Agriculture Conservation Economic Education Center. In 2019, which is a current project that we're in the middle of finalizing by March of 2022, is an access to agriculture project where we're looking to highlight farm produce for rural transit dependent populations. And then in 2021, we applied for an agriculture and rural business development and marketing project. And Jillian Shea, who is our youth education and outreach coordinator, is on this call, and she is going to be leading up that project in the coming year. And as I noted, the RBDG Farm Energy from 2009, the first application to current, that is one of our highest priorities. Amanda has built a tremendous program over the last 10 years and more. So the Connecticut Agriculture Conservation Economic Center, Education Center, was a project that we had been talking about with USDA back in 2016 when I came on board. I was talking with the regional director, and we were talking about the need to promote rural economies and elements of bringing together small business as well as agriculture and understanding the interrelationship between that and the work that we also do with NRCS. So the state director noted that there was funding available. We applied for it and received it. So part of this project was to do site evaluations for several properties to see what would be an optimal layout and system for creating what we called the Casey Center. And it was the goal was to create new business opportunities potentially in an incubator space for, say, farmers who or ag producers who wanted to produce market goods, so to sell in stores, or to even produce a store where people could learn how to do internships to sell goods. We looked at all different permutations of options for this particular center, and we looked at various places. The goal was to, this is an example of a farm, a town-owned farm called Hokum Farm in Granby, Connecticut, which is in northern Connecticut. They've done a phenomenal job of not only acquiring this former farm, but they have preserved and protected it and then expanded their operations to provide hosting events, educational forums, And what we looked at was we added some other notes. So you'll see our red arrows on the left side of the screen where we were saying, well, how could maybe if the right site came along, we could do hiking trails, or what can we do for educational practices? We're in a watershed. What are the best streams and water resource practices that we can do? We could lease agriculture land that might be available and then have an agriculture and conservation demonstration and research center. So the list went on. The other pictures are of our team. We had numerous stakeholders involved in this process, and they went with staff to go evaluate several sites. The top two photographs were one where we looked at thinking about a food hub. It was an old factory. It was going to need some environmental remediation, but there are certainly environmental remediation grants available in Connecticut that we were seeking. So we looked at that site because it would have made an interesting food hub and education center in the middle of a village district that is really in need of some economic revitalization. The bottom photograph was one of our ideal properties. It was a farm in a fairly wealthy community in southern Connecticut, but we looked at this place and did 2 tours, and it was clearly so popular that before we can even make an offer to the owner, because we're keen on making this project a realization, somebody came in and bought it, so we lost that option. And then our final report to USDA at the end of the project, we ended up hiring the Conway School of Landscape Architecture, and their students came in. We identified a site called the Scoville site. It was a former hoe factory that manufactured hose that had been turned into a Connecticut Department of Transportation center for operations of salt sheds and truck storage and maintenance. There were some remediation issues, but we hired through the grant, we hired the Conway School of Landscape Architecture, which is a graduate program, and they came in and looked at the existing conditions and what would be the optimal way of laying out the site. So we not only just looked at the sites, but we kind of built a site, not from the inside, because that's we wanted some flexibility on that, but what would the outside look like and how could we best use the property? So on the right side, you'll see there's still continued enthusiasm for this project on the part of the board and on the part of some of our partners. So we are still continuing. The project has closed out, but we're still looking to find a property to potentially locate our RC&D Casey Center. We didn't end up going with Scoville. We were very much interested in it, but the town decided against sewer installation. And there was no room for septic feasibility. And we're migrating the concept to other projects. Right now, we're working on an affordable farm and housing project in Lebanon, Connecticut, which is in the eastern central part of the state. And maybe we could conceivably build this type of center there. But now at least we have a template. And for working with USDA, we hope to promote those same goals. This is sort of the final visualization of what that project might have looked like. And then our other current project that Amanda and I are working on is the access to agriculture, locally grown food for rural transit dependent populations. The project goal was to provide onboard information system to drive marketing and social media awareness of local access to local farms and fresh produce in rural food deserts within Connecticut. And we picked 2 rural areas. One is along the coastline in Connecticut, and then we picked in eastern Connecticut, the Windham County area. And this will have, we're working with the University of Connecticut Technology Lab to create this cell phone app and website system so that when people go on board, they can take their cell phone and use the scan code, the QR code, or there will be, Amanda, you'll see in that middle picture is highlighting a sign. We will develop signs for the buses. And then on the bottom, you'll see the onboard bus displays. There will be 4 buses of the larger buses that will have an on-screen display with more information ongoing on a rolling basis that will drive people to the website. So on that website, we'll be showing farm stands, grocers that are hosting local farm produce, farm markets, soup kitchens, and food pantries. And then this is the last project that we just recently were awarded that Jillian will be working on. This is the Agriculture and Rural Business Development and Marketing Project. I extracted our description of what the project was going to be from our application because it was so succinct. Amanda and Jillian have been working with a number of farmers through the Farm Up program, which is also funded by USDA. And they noted that there's a definite need for support to farmers to build their business through social media engagement, mailing lists, MailChimp, the whole list goes on, to build awareness of their business. So this project will work with graduate level students or college students at the University of Connecticut and Eastern Connecticut State University to create support systems for the numerous farmers or rural small businesses. So that is that project. And I did not put a final slide with my contact information. But if you look at Amanda's contact information, there will be the resources that you need to contact either of us.
Thank you, Anne, Amanda, and Jean. These were excellent, excellent. I believe this is the best I've ever understood RD programs, actually. So let's take questions. And if you are in our audience, if you could put your name and what RC&D or what area of the country you're from in the chat, that way we kind of know where you're coming from. But let's ask if there are any questions from people who are participating today to the presenters on any of the information that they talked about. Is there any questions? Just go ahead and jump in there. Well, I'll get one to get started. So the energy audits that are done, and I'll leave it to whomever wants to answer this, are these by third-party providers or are the RC&Ds actually doing those?
I'll let Amanda speak from experience, but I'm pretty sure it's by a third-party provider, but you can probably add to that, Amanda.
Yeah, so for us, it's third-party provider, both for our geothermal assessments and for our energy audits. I do know several years back, RC&Ds were being trained in how to do energy audits. Mm-hmm. So presumably if an RC&D knew how to conduct one, you could utilize the funds to do it yourself. But in our case, we work with professionals that do this every day and they do it for us.
Okay. Other questions from people who are participating today? So I know that many times I saw that it can be used for salaries, and presumably this is how some of you are using this. Is there a limitation on the amount of money that can be used for administering a program?
So that's going to actually differ from program to program. So one of my slides, I believe it's the energy audit slide, I'm just referring back to, I believe is 5%. Okay. So there are limitations, but you should look individually at each individual program to determine if there are restrictions on the use of administrative funds. But in most of our programs across all of rural development, there are some restrictions on admin expenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
To know that that's a possibility.
We're hearing somebody talking in the background. I'm not sure who that is. All right. Are there other questions? And you can even put them in the chat if you have questions for our presenters. So how long has Connecticut RC&D been using RD funds like this? I saw you started, like, was it 2019? Is that the first, or have you
2009.
2009, so for a lot of time. So
yeah.
are there any restrictions for reapplying? And then we've got a question from Helen. To reapply for a grant, you can do it more than once?
We have, yes. And I don't know if you want to elaborate.
Yes, I mean, so we've been working since 2009, you said? Amanda? Yeah. So it's been, and previous to me being the area director, actually, I was the energy coordinator for about 10 years. And Amanda and I have worked together for a long time on multiple projects, not just REAP related projects, but RBDG projects. So yes, you are allowed to come back multiple times. What I would say is that under the RBDG program more specifically, we will look at in terms of the scoring criteria in the evaluating of your application. If it's the exact same project from year to year to year, you may not score as high. But if you have a different target or a different focus in each program, you would obtain additional points for that. So it'll be a little bit dependent on funding availability. If it's maybe just a continuation of the same program that you've done in previous years and were already awarded, that will be taken into consideration with the RBDG program.
Okay.
One item you might want to highlight, Amanda, maybe is that, like, for instance, with some of our applications, we've come up with different programs. We did not go over our Farm Up program. Amanda's originated both a Farm Up program and a Veterans Farm Up program to support farmers.
Yeah, so it's a package presentation. So it would include farm energy, and then one year we did Farm Up. The following year we did Veteran Farm Up. Our funds, the funds and the amount of applicants is obviously going, and scoring dictates what we're going to get in the end. So if there's not a lot of competition one year and you score well, great. But there have been years where we've been offered a reduced allocation, if you will, based on the high demand and request for applications.
All right. Helen, you've got a question. You want to unmute and ask your question?
Hello, thank you very much. So I'm with the Upper Okmulgee River RC&D over in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're a little stagnant. So we're trying to get back into the swing of things. Is there any assistance or any guidance on how to get some of these energy programs out to our, for lack of a better term, our community members, to inform them and to get this going on a more basic level?
Well, from personal experience, we started from scratch. So I would say the best place to start is obviously to reach out to your energy coordinator at your local rural development office. And so in partnering with them, we would host like workshops to get interest with farms about the REAP program. And then also we held several kind of stakeholder meetings, more formally and informally, to have a better understanding of what your like state ag program may offer, what your utilities offer for incentives. So you have a clear understanding of that kind of package. So when you are talking with a farm, so essentially if you want to start a farm energy program in your area, you would apply for RBDG grant to provide that assistance. And then you're helping the farm apply for the REAP grant. It's kind of this leapfrog. And so you having a knowledge of what is available in your area is really helpful to the farms, because a lot of times they have no idea. Oh, I didn't know I was eligible for that. Oh, I didn't know that program existed. So you really can benefit them in a lot of ways, not just applying for REAP, but just having that knowledge and being able to direct them. And it's a learning curve. It was a couple of years, I would say, you know, we were applying for REAPs as early as 2010 with farms, but we pretty much max out allocation in terms of the applications that go to the state office now. It wasn't always like that, I guess is what I'm saying. But as your program builds and folks hear from another farm, they want to do it themselves. We in Connecticut don't have a dedicated energy allotment through our state Department of Agriculture, but like Massachusetts and Vermont, even Rhode Island, they do. So each state has different offerings. You need to really understand what's available to your farms. That would be my suggestion.
So start with state ag is basically.
Yes, start with state ag and your utilities.
Yes, and I would agree exactly what Amanda said. I would certainly reach out to your state Department of Agriculture and start working with them and partnering with them, or any other resources that might be available through utilities. So that way you have the full picture when you are assisting farmers or small businesses.
And your energy coordinator with rural development should be able to help guide that as well.
Amanda, what would you say would be the top 3 things if Helen was to go, or anybody on the call was to go and apply for the RBDG grant in and of itself, the things to watch for as you're writing out an application or registering even for the government website application, or that could go to Ann also?
I know for us, it was just making sure you have your cage code at sam.gov, right? And that's part of applying for REAP. You have to help the producers through that process. And just having all your documentation that's required, as Anna outlined, is really important. And making sure you have a strong scope of work with realistic deliverables.
Yes, I would agree. And also kind of evaluating the criteria, because every program does have different scoring criteria. So when you're completing the application and you're writing your scope of work or your narrative, you want to be inclusive with the items that are going to be evaluated as part of the scoring criteria. All the documentation or justification that you can include as part of that narrative is only going to help your application score better.
Any other questions for our panelists? So, Anne, if can you not go to grants.gov and be notified when all USDA grants are coming up? I think that's one of the things that we did.
You can, yeah. There is a, so whenever a new announcement comes out in the federal register, there is a notification system that you can use in grants.gov. And I will say that all of the programs that I've talked about today do have the potential to use grants.gov as submitting your application, but not required. And I also would probably add that if you were going to use grants.gov, you'd probably want to reach out to your state or local office. Just sometimes there are different state requirements, and grants.gov doesn't kind of always incorporate that. They have the base application. So there might be other items that might be needed that aren't always included in those documents, or at least easily able to interpret. And that's where your state or local office would be able to help.
And in the state or local office, this energy coordinator, is that the title they look for, the person in the state offices or regional?
Yeah, so the energy coordinator would cover basically all programs energy. So REAP and RETA and EA, you would want to reach out to the energy coordinator. The RBDG isn't handled generally, but again, every state is structured a little bit differently, and it could be the possibility that it's the same person, just how that, depending on how that state is structured. In our states, the energy coordinator only handles all things energy, but they're also spread across 3 states, since we work as a multi-jurisdiction. But, and then in our states, we have a separate grants who is called the grants coordinator, and she would be the person who would handle RBDG grants. So you would reach out to your kind of local or state office and ask, you know, who handles RBDG grants? Do you have a grant coordinator? And I'm in this area. You could have multiple grant coordinator in one state if you have a very large state. So you'd really want to reach out to that local office that is within your service area.
And that is what we have found here in Tennessee, that local coordinator has always connected us to the state or federal side, side of individuals, and have been very helpful. And ladies, your presentations have been great today. And thank you so much for putting this great presentation. We will be sending out this. There is a post survey on your screen now for you each to answer 3 questions. I know I'm a lot more confident and knowledgeable after hearing these presentations, and we will have the contact information for Anne, Amanda, and Jean in those presentations. We have one more session in 2 months. They're every 2 months, and it'll be November the 11th at 2 p.m. And it's going to be on youth engagement. and is actually sponsored by the National Association of RC&Ds. So we hope that you will join us, and we'll have more about that coming to you if you've been on our mailing list. But again, thank you so much for the time. And it's great to hear from the Northeast at this point. So it sounds like you have a lot going on there. But again, thank you for joining us. And we appreciate everybody being here today. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thank you for having us.